Hello and welcome to English Capsules. For those who can wait, here is our espresso capsule.
On today's espresso capsule, so be it.
On this capsule, we are going to have a look at the many different uses of the verb to be, a verb that in general is a cause of a headache for many students.
So we are going to try to trace our steps and analyze why do you think that this is a traumatic verb for our students? Let's start with the trauma. I always like trauma.
Okay, before going to the trauma, let me clarify that for our audience, there will be more espresso capsules to continue this one. So this is one of the several to come. So going back to trauma, uh, I don't know if it is traumatic, the word, but you can see that it's a very confusing thing for our students. It's like uh, it is a verb that they always remember, and I think it is because it was so hard to get. Uh, if you ask anyone who doesn't know English, they say, ah, the verb to be. Maybe they know nothing about English, but that is something they remember.
Yes, I have seen my students struggle with this. I'm like, oh, this verb.
Mhm.
But I think that is most of the time they don't realize that they already know the verb because they use it. Like they
Mhm.
can say their names, I'm Virginia, for instance,
Mhm.
and they are using the verb be. But when you have, I think the problem comes when you have to apply the rules to the verb, and you see that it's got like, for instance, it's got
Different forms, maybe.
different forms. Thank you. Yeah.
Mhm.
So if we talk about the like we were discussing before, if we talk about the present simple, it's got three
Mhm.
different ways in which we have to use it, and we have to pay attention to the subject because it can be am, is, or are.
Mhm.
So the less you think about it, the easier it is. But when you have to think about it, it's a headache for most of my students at least.
The same happens to many of my students. And something else is that when you ask them or when you try to explain to them what it is, and you have to say that it is a verb, but at the same time it can work as an auxiliary verb, it's like it's more confusing. So when they are beginners and they start to learn it, nothing happens. But then when they have to contrast the verb to be with others, like for example, do, other auxiliaries, I mean, like do or did, they start to get confused because I think that in their heads it's not easy to think of verb to be having these two functions.
Probably. Yes. What I have seen is that when they start learning the function of auxiliary verb,
Mhm.
they believe that they have to apply this function every time that they are using the verb.
Sure.
So we end up with sentences in the present simple that have the verb be where you shouldn't use it. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know, you say instead of I play football, I am play football.
Exactly. Yes. This is a very typical example. The same happens in questions. They know that in general we have this order, this structure to build a question that is auxiliary, subject, and then the verb. So they write something like, "Where are you play?" instead of "Where do you play?" It's that is the time when it becomes confusing when they start working with other verbs or other verbs, other tenses, other auxiliary verbs. That's the time when it is more confusing.
So the less rules you apply, the better you are at using it because like we were saying, is the first verb that you learn probably,
Hmm. Yeah.
and when you don't think about it, you use it right.
Or if you want to think about it, because this happens to me a lot, because I work, as you know, with adult students and they want to know why, and they want to know the explanation, and they want to analyze, and they need to know the why. I tell them, and this is something a friend of mine told me, that is, it's like it's a parallel highway. they never mix, they never touch each other. So it's like they go like parallel, but it's like if you're going to use the verb to be, you cannot use do or the rest of the auxiliaries, like do or did, like in simple tenses, I mean. So it's good, it's a good analogy in order to distinguish more easily and to implement it in your day-to-day life or in your the sentences and questions and everything. In this case, many times, in my case, translation also works. Because if you say, I am play, if you translate that into Spanish, it doesn't make any sense. Translation is not an enemy, but we have to be careful when to use it and when not to use it literally. And in these cases, it helps.
I agree. Okay, another thing that we planned to discuss is why is
To
it,
be.
or like my joke, to be,
Yes.
like the chocolate. Where
Why
this
the
comes,
two? Mhm.
yeah, because like the rest of the verbs, when you teach them in the infinitive form, you only say the form. You don't use the verb, use the preposition to before.
Mhm.
But I don't know if it's like teachers who have some sort of mantra or what, and they teach it as to be. So, on top of all the hardship that we are discussing, you add that you are using the preposition before.
An extra
So,
word. At the same time, students who are beginners, when you say to be, they think that the to is part of the verb. It's like it has two words. It's a verb with two words, to be. And then they don't realize that to be is like the infinitive because if you remove the to, for them, be is another verb. It's something else. It's like it's very confusing. I don't know why the two. So maybe someone in the audience knows the answer. So if you do know it, please enlighten us with the answer because here we have no clue.
there's no logical explanation. It's because some teacher at some point decided to add the to and that's it.
Or Shakespeare with the to be or not to be. No, we don't know actually. We don't know.
I would say that our audience needs to stay tuned because we are going to add more espresso capsules, trying to enlighten you with the uses of the verb be.
Yeah, and many, many more to come. I'm sure that we are going to have many more espresso capsules. That's all for now, right?
That's all for now.